don't write as much as I'd like because the words are never perfect. How do I put an end to my perfectionism?
Define perfect word. I mean, it's perfectionism. Somebody told me this, a comedian told me this. He said, perfectionism is not wanting things to be perfect. Perfectionism is having an impossible standard that will always make you miserable doing your work. They're like, I mean, forget about all these, like, there's no, all the memes of like, there's no such thing as perfection. Like, perfect words. I mean, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Words are just words. It's like, I'm waiting for the perfect weather. Well, good luck. Weather changes all the time. What you're doing as a writer is you're channeling the currency of energy and life that's happening through you in any given moment, and you're trying to contain it in a story, in a paragraph, in a whatever. And that's why when you go back to the page the next day, you change it, because there's a different thing happening. And that's cool. That's fine. And what you are doing as a writer is you're actually curating all these moments that you've been encountering over the course of a month or 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. And you've got to find a way to contain that process for you. And your process is not my process. You ever heard that maxim that says there are 3 rules for writing? Unfortunately, nobody knows what they are. Right? It's like, no, this is the way it works. And it's like, but this guy does it over here completely differently, You have to find your own madness. And for me, I know that I don't write a better book in 18 months than I write in 6 months. But I know that if I try to write it in 1 month, it's not as good. Like, I know kind of what my threshold is for good. I'm not trying to get to perfect. I'm trying to get to something that is better than the last thing I did so that I know that I'm growing. And I always try to take on projects that I don't know I can do, right? Because that's how I'm going to grow into it. I'm going to step into it. And there's because we were getting all biblical, there was an old Bible story about the prophet Samuel who got a new coat at the beginning of every year. And if you think about this, he was as a boy, and he was kind of coming up studying under, this other prophet, and he was learning how to be a holy man, basically. And once a year he got a new coat. Now, how big did that coat have to be? If it fit him the day he tried, as a boy, the day he tried it on, he wouldn't be able to wear it all year. And so he had to get a bigger coat. And this is how we ought to choose creative projects. We should always be putting on a coat that's about a year ahead of us so that by the end of the year, it fits. You know what I'm saying? So pick projects, pick endeavors that you don't know that you can do. I mean, for perfectionism, I don't know what planet you're on. Like, find a vision to create something that excites you. And you go, I don't know if I can do this. Awesome. And then figure out the words that you need to fit into that container to make it happen so that by the end of it, you go, I didn't know that I could do it. Wonderful. Perfect words don't exist. Words exist. And be like Shakespeare. If you can't find the right words, just make them up. Like, he just made up words, or Trump, Shakespeare or Trump, that same thing. Just make stuff up. Oh, man. But like, if you're messing with words, you're stuck in the details. The vision is, how do I make something that excites me? And I don't know if I could do it. You see a problem in the world that nobody is solving, and you go, I want to try to solve that problem. That's what we mean when we say add value. It's like, somebody's not talking about this. Somebody's not doing it, or they're not doing it the way that I would do it. Cool. Try it. And hopefully you fail a few times, so that tells you you're trying things that are bigger than you can do. If you spend your whole life doing things that you're comfortable with, that's boring. You're not growing.
You've just given me like a whole new perspective on perfectionism, because there's no perfect, but on the other side of the coin, there's no such thing as imperfect.
Perfect, the etymology of perfect in kind of Middle English means complete. There's a difference between perfection and pristine. Make your work complete, not pristine, not flawless. What are you talking about? Flawless. You walk down the street and you're like, these trees are asymmetrical. No, you're crazy. Perfection is an idea that you invented to make yourself unhappy with the work that you're going to do. So stop it. Start doing work that is complete. How do you know it's complete? Because you finished it. Leonardo da Vinci says, what does he say? He says, art is never finished, only abandoned, right? And there's two ways to abandon art. One is you don't complete it. The other is you go, God, this could be so much better. And I'm so afraid. And I'm going to call it done. I'm going to put it out into the world. And I'm going to learn from this experience of completing this so I can go do the next one.
This is the best thing I could do given the time and resources I had, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about, there's sort of perfectionism here from two perspectives. And I think they both stem from the same source. I think there are people who suffer from perfectionism. And I think there are people who thrive in spite of their perfectionism. And when I talked about earlier on the private podcast here, while I'm very detail oriented, and those details help me thrive as long as I don't get too bogged down into it, where I'm trying to perfect everything. Now, I will challenge you on one thing, although I do think perfection is perspectival to a great extent. You talked about perfect weather. Well, according to whom, right?
Of course.
Like, to me, it's like 72 and sunny, and Ryan, it's like cloudy and rainy, right?
Exactly.
And 60-inch snow base with some 12 or 13 inches on top of fluff. That's perfect weather for me.
and so it is perspectival in that respect. But then I would say the same thing with like writing. If I read a Don DeLillo novel, I can't get past a few pages because it's like reading a painting.
I know.
Right? And so like you just get stuck. And then you realize how he does it is he's quite the perfectionist as well. He types one paragraph at a time on a typewriter. Even if the sentence is one sentence per paragraph, he types it out. And that's one page. And he sets it aside. And he's looking, how do the words look relative to the other words in the sentence? Yeah. And by the end of a novel, he has an entire sort of book of these individual paintings. Every sentence is like a painting. And that's something that I aspire toward quite often, but also realize that all of his resources go into writing the sentence. By the way, there's very little plot in what he does. It's just...
they're pictures.
Yeah. It's pictures that move you through to the end of the book, and not a whole lot happens, but it's beautiful the whole time. Now, also, to me, aesthetics mean a whole lot more than ideas do. And so the aesthetic of the sentence really resonates with me more than like trying to communicate some grand idea. So that's my idea of perfect. Someone else might open up The Body Artist and say, what the hell is this? This is going nowhere.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
I taught online courses for years, and people would always go, is this good? And I would just basically say, to whom?
Yeah.
And what does it mean to be good? I love Hemingway. People think he's terrible. You might like Harry Potter. This is brilliant. What is it? You could be a literary writer, you could be a genre writer, and it's like, good to whom? What does that mean? When I hear what you're describing, I think you have standards.
Yeah.
And your standards aren't my standards.
Yeah.
Just like when we walk through an art museum, it's like, wow, I like some of this. I don't like other things. I kind of understand this. I don't understand it. And 10 years later, I walk through and I like other things.
Yes.
And it's like, cool. Hearing you talk about that, I had a friend who lived on the property of Cormac McCarthy's editor. And one day he asked the guy who owned this land, and my friend was the groundskeeper for Cormac McCarthy's editor. And he said, what is it like? And he saw some pages on his desk, and he goes, what's it like working with, editing Cormac McCarthy? He goes, if I get through a paragraph, it's a good day. And it's like, that's his craft.
Yeah.
And one is not better than the other. Cormac McCarthy is not trying to be J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Right.
She's a billionaire. He's not. Right. Who's right? I don't know. Like, both of those works, because of their significance to culture, both of the works of these artists will live on for probably the next 100 years for different reasons.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So that's your vision. Know what you're trying to create.
Yes.
Understand. I think it was Dan Pink who said that mastery is an asymptote, which is, when's the last time you heard that? Seventh grade math or something. An asymptote is like, imagine a graph where you have this line that consistently gets closer and closer to an axis, to another line, but never touches it.
Yeah.
It's that old math problem of like, if a frog leapt half the length of the pier and a half, he'd never get to the end. Well, that's mastery. Mastery is getting closer and closer to an ideal. This is kind of this old Western Greek concept that there are these ideals of beauty, and the projection of that ideal is art. There's an ideal of, justice, and our legal system is an imperfect representation of that. And we're always, as human beings, trying to get closer and closer to the ideal. And that could be that can kill an artist.
Yeah.
If you're like, it's not good enough. Or it can enliven you because you're constantly getting better at your craft. What is, I can't remember, but it's a progression of greatness towards a worthy goal. And there's like a Viktor Frankl thing in there somewhere, but like happiness actually comes from us trying to do something great and never quite getting exactly there. And every attempt is better, And it can be maddening or enlivening depending on your perspective. But everybody's got different standards, and our job as artists is to know what those standards are. Because you're not competing with everybody, but you are competing with people who share your standards. If you read an author and you go, I would love to do that, good, right? Like that gives you a reason to get up tomorrow and try harder.
Yeah. You said that, the artist needs to focus on what they want to create. Maybe another way to look at it is, what do they want to communicate? And instead of asking themselves, like, is this work perfect? Is this is this as good as it can be? The question is, are you communicating as clearly as possible what you're trying to communicate?
I asked a friend one time, my writing coach, Marion Roach Smith, wonderful author, wrote a great book called The Memoir Project. If anybody ever wants to write memoir, I would highly recommend that very short book. She's a brilliant writer. And she, I said, I was working on this book actually. And it was, every book takes me, I just mentioned, I can't do it in 1 month, but I can do it in 6 months. And I've written 5 books under my own name and about a dozen plus, including ghostwritten books. And every book takes me twice as long as the previous book because my standards keep going up. I don't want to write that book again. I want to write something better. And I asked her when I was about, in the 3rd or 4th developmental edit of this book, and I said, how do I know when I'm done? Because I could add this story or change this or do that. She said, you're done when you've made your argument. Like think of it as like you're in court as a lawyer. Going back to lawyer, this episode is brought to you by LegalZoom. And when you rest, when you made your case, and the reader is the jury and the judge, and they get to, sometimes the executioner, and they get to decide if you convinced them. Yeah. That's the hard part of making anything, is of course you go into it with an idea, an argument, a message, something that you want to change, and then you try to put it into this thing, and people screw it up, man. Like they get other things out of it, and they read words in there that you never wrote.
Yeah.
And your job is to make your case, make your argument, and then rest and go, have fun. And as Liz Gilbert says, once you release it, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to this cosmic craziness where people pick up all kinds of things that you never meant to say. Yeah. And that's beautiful. It can be really beautiful.
I think perfectionism often stems from fear of some sort. And so fear of being thought of in a way, fear of being rejected, fear of failure. But we're defining all of these things based on some predetermined bias that we picked up along the way, right? And so if I don't do the thing, if I don't write, then I can't fail at being a writer, right? I can be the perfect writer in my head. And I think that's the essence of Jeffrey's question here. Like, you're a perfect writer until you start writing.
Yeah. And then you have to change your definition of perfection. You have to move it from pristine to complete. Did I do the best that I knew how to do with the time and resources that I had today? Then you rest. You go, Your Honor, the defense rests. And tomorrow is a different day with different circumstances.
Yeah.
Alan Watts says the key to fear is to not be afraid of it. And so I think that's really the way that you overcome perfectionism.
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalists private podcast available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.